My name is Claire Stewart.
And my name is Evan McDonald.
This is Paper Trails, where we examine pieces of microhistory to better understand Black freedom in the age of emancipation.
Today we will be looking at a newspaper ad from the Freedom on the Move database that was posted by an enslaver.
Although this newspaper ad is only 158 words, those words can help us better understand the true experiences of enslaved people at the time. By analyzing the language, landscape, and perspective of this ad, we will be able to understand bigger ideas than just what is written.
Starting off with the Missouri Compromise in 1820, this was a law that addressed sectional tensions in the North and South over slavery. This compromise admitted Missouri as a slave state while simultaneously admitting Maine, which was previously a part of Massachusetts, as a free state. This kept the balance in the Senate of slave states and free states.
In 1831, Nat Turner's revolt took place. This is one of the deadliest slave revolts in history. Nat Turner planned and executed an attack on his owner and their family, and then enlisted the help of nearly 75 other enslaved people who gathered arms and horses and killed an estimated 55 white people. Nat Turner was later caught and executed. However, this revolt increased insurrection anxiety in Southerners, which later caused repressive laws to keep communities and alliances from forming between the enslaved population.
Lastly, in 1839, the Amistad Mutiny took place. 53 slaves taken from Africa revolted aboard a slave ship and overtook control in order to sail themselves back home to Sierra Leone, a key departure point for West African slaves in the Atlantic slave trade. The Africans were captured and taken to Connecticut, a slave state, where they were held and faced trial. The trial ruled in favor of the Africans since they were sailing towards Cuba, where slavery was not legal. They were victims of kidnapping. The Africans were granted passage home to Sierra Leone. This was a pivotal moment in the abolitionist movement and contributed to further insurrection anxieties.
It is important to note that Henry Fields is described as a free man. Additionally, we can see that he had a last name. In the Freedom Papers, written by Rebecca J. Scott and John M. Hebbard, the stripping away of their names signaled a rupture with their past lives. This absence of a last name resembled the absence of their freedom and the disconnect of their heritage. This was an attempt by enslavers to remove agency from enslaved people and to discourage connection due to fear of insurrection.
The use of the word stolen by the enslaver reaffirms that the runaway slave was viewed as property of the owner. We see this same attitude based on the absence of a last name for Maria. As Claire mentioned, this was a purposeful attempt to remove humanity from enslaved people. The stripping of last names was an attempt at social death for enslaved people, and it is an example of how slavery differentiated from indentured servitude. This was described as natal alienation, an attempt at removing enslaved people from their African heritage.
The descriptive language is from the perspective of the enslaver and not the enslaved person. This gives us insight on what information a slave owner found valuable. From the perspective of the slave owner, the enslaved person was only valuable based on the labor they could do.
This ad says that Henry Fields has a certificate of freedom to confirm his status as a free man. This certificate may have been a manumission certificate.
Manumission certificates were given to an enslaved person by their enslaver, and it certified their release from slavery. Formerly enslaved people were required to carry these papers with them at all times, as they were subjected to be asked at any time to present their papers in order to confirm their free status. Failure to present these papers could result in being returned to slavery.
In this next section, we see language from the perspective of the enslaver once again. The term yellowish complexion was used to describe people with lighter skin versus people with darker skin. We can assume from the description of Maria's lighter complexion that somewhere in her lineage, a white man, most likely a slave owner, fathered a child to an enslaved woman. In 1662, Partus Sequitur Ventrum was a law that stated children were to inherit the legal status of their mother, not their fathers.
Life as a young enslaved woman was vastly different from the life of an enslaved man. Women were often subject to additional abuses, for example, sexual assault. Partus Sequitur Ventrum was created to enable white men to rape enslaved women and then reap the benefits later. The mixed-race child of an enslaved black woman and a free white man became the property of the enslaved woman's owner, increasing the slave owner's profits in the long run.
Henry Fields and Maria were fleeing Franklin County, Tennessee, and were believed to be heading for Kentucky, and from there, a free state. Kentucky was along the Missouri Compromise line that separated slave states in the south to free states in the north. It was a key border in the Underground Railroad due to its position on the Missouri Compromise line and helped the system in which slaves attempted to escape freedom.
Henry, Fields, and Maria were thought to have been making their way to a free state north of Kentucky. However, even if they managed to make it, there's no guarantee that they would maintain free status. In 1793, the Fugitive Slave Act was a federal law that mandated the capture of enslaved people who escaped to a free state, and they were to be returned to their owners. Even if someone had manumission papers, the validity of those could be questioned, and there was a possibility that formerly enslaved people could be forced to return to slavery.
Overall, this newspaper ad is an element of microhistory, and it gives us information about the reality of an enslaved person's life and treatment.
The presence of these ads also says a lot about the economic reliance on enslaved people in the Southern economy. The reliance was so heavy that there had to be an organized system to find and return enslaved people to their owners, and they were even willing to give rewards. This exemplifies the attempts to control the enslaved community.
These ads also show us that regardless of what history tells us, this was not another time, and enslavers were well aware that what they were doing was wrong. These ads show the constant resistance against slavery, and despite attempts, you could never take the full agency of an enslaved person away.